Oh, you have to allow me to share screen, so I'll talk while you do that. But welcome everyone, and it's really exciting to see where all of you are from, because this is a really important conversation that is just at the beginning of its iterations. And so having this conversation early, having this conversation often, and rethinking what we can do here is this incredible opportunity that we've been given. So I've put most of my things into a book because this is for Book Creator, and I want you to come in and use a book. So I'm going to screen share and get you over to that. So in case you have not been, all you have to do is go to, and let me just change my thing to everyone. All you have to do is go to app.bookcreator.com, and you're going to get all the resources, all the graphics that I've made. Some of them are hot off the press, like, because I'm writing a book right now, and I'm like down with my head getting this book done. And so some of them are like, maybe going into the book, I still have to edit them. So like you're getting hot off the press kind of things right now. So if you go to app.bookcreator.com, and let me do this on the screen over here, so you can see what I'm doing. If you can't do this, we can get you these like slides or whatever another way. But I am a big fan of Book Creator, so I wanted to make a book. It's not the best looking book, but if you go to app, and it won't let me do it, but if you go to app.bookcreator.com and you sign in as a teacher, and you'll know you're signing in as a teacher because the background will be blue and there'll be a little owl at the top, and that gives you a little indication. And when you get in, it's going to ask you some questions about yourself. And if you happen to be in a country where it's just not possible right now or something, I don't think there are any right now, but just in case, we'll get you a different form of this. And once you get in, you're going to scroll down to the bottom, because you're going to have some libraries of your own at the top. And you're going to scroll to the bottom to where it says shared with me. And you're going to use where it says join, and you're going to use this code. Let me do it again. So once you go to join a library, it will ask for this code. And hopefully that will get you there. But what I'm going to do is share this book and have it open on the screen so you'll be able to follow along. And at the end, I'm going to leave time for you to ask questions, as well as, if you couldn't get the book, we'll work through that. I'll give you some slides. We'll help you is anything that you need. So we're going to be talking about ChatGPT and the writing process, and kind of giving it a slant into Book Creator. But to do that, this is kind of let me just see how I have this. Oh, this has my book coming soon that I'm working on. It's coming very, very soon because I happen to be a publisher, so I can get it out quicker than most. So it'll be before May 1st. But when people hear about ChatGPT, which I'm going to go over in a second, they hear that it can write for kids. And this is the first thing I think they believe. And the code is up on the top. John, can you put that in again? This is what they think is going to happen.
I'm very happy with. There was a really great essay from Clyde on the 1840s labor unions and their effect on the Industrial Revolution. Someone who never writes good essays, wrote an amazing piece on post-Cold War Poland and the changing provision of security. Feminist neoliberal perspective of post-war Afghanistan. This week we have a new student to the Czech Plus Club for an amazing essay called Writing a Policy About Improving the Rights of Migrant Workers. Let's hear it for Stan.
So I think that most people think that ChatGPT is going to be this place where kids who have never written something good before are going to go on and have ChatGPT write for them, which is, yes, they are going to do that. But it's our job as educators to be ahead of that thought process and think of the ways that kids can do this differently. And I think we have this like incredible opportunity right now to rethink the things that we've always wanted in the classroom. So I'm going to play a video right now that just shows kind of what ChatGPT is. And instead of, and let me turn that down a little if I can. And so what it's doing here is I'm asking it, can you write a 5-paragraph essay or a summary response about The Outsiders? And The Outsiders is a book that almost every 7th grade student in the United States reads. And you can see it's giving a response. Then I asked it to take that and make it a paragraph and put it in a table with 5 different writing styles so that maybe I could pass that out to kids and have them compare and contrast. Now I'm asking ChatGPT for an IEP for a student with dyslexia who's reading The Outsiders. So this is all of the things that it can do. It's gonna go on to show you, and you'll have access to all of this, even the funny video. So let's say I'm a teacher and I'm like, hey, what are 10 writing prompts that I could have for The Outsiders? Because maybe it's my first year teaching it, or I want to see what ChatGPT recommends different from what I do. And maybe I am my first year teaching it and I'd like a summary of it before I begin. I probably have to read the book, but what are those points that are salient that I need to remember to teach? And so I can ask ChatGPT things like that. I can ask what it thinks the main themes are and compare that with what I think the main themes are, or the students think the main themes are. I can also ask it, how would I teach equity using this book? What would be the parts of equity that I could get at from The Outsiders, which is a question I hope we ask a lot more that we have now that we have ChatGPT. And then what are some of the missing viewpoints? And it's going to tell you, like, it's missing the parent voice, it's missing women, it's missing the teachers in the book, things like that. So it's just a place where I can go and quickly and easily access information about anything. And so it's really Google search on steroids, if you think of it in that way, instead of us thinking of it as a place where kids can go and cheat. So let's step back for a second and let's just ground ourselves in what is artificial intelligence. And so artificial intelligence is a way to create computer programs that can perform tasks that typically require the human intelligence. And there's two types of programs that we are now interacting with. And those types of programs are, oh, there we go, is the human trained AI. And you have been dealing with human trained AI when you go to a different chatbot that go, if you're going to a customer service and they're like, do you want to chat? That's a chatbot that is human trained, or there's a human behind it. And things like fraud protection for your credit card, things like Siri, anything that we've done before that did AI basically was from human trained. So a human came in and said, here's the input someone's going to put, and here's the output you should do. And there could be, So is, hi, Charity, by the way, I was seeing there's no sound. Is that true?
No, I think it's just one person that's having an issue right now. I think everybody's okay.
Okay. And it looks like, well, and Charity's just a great educator out of Canada. But anyway, so we have the human trained AI, and now what we're interacting with is something quite more powerful. And it's really important to understand this, because if you understand what this is, you can understand how it's going to work. And so the new AI that we're dealing with is a neural network. It is a deep learning model, which means it has almost those neuron synapses that we have in our brain, in that it goes, oh, I learned this, now I'm going to go over here and learn something else, and I know something else. And it's actually learning from the information that it's fed, in the way that students in schools learn information and then make connections using neural synapses. And it's the same thing. You think of it like with nodes, where the other time, this was something that the human would say, hey, if A happens, then B, C, or D. And that's not what is happening now. So let's just step back and think about that human trained. A human trained chatbot might do something like this. It might be for American Airlines. I don't know why I always use this example, but you might go in and say, hey, I want a refund for a ticket because the flight was canceled. And a chatbot might come up and say, oh, here are the things that you do. And it sends you, you've probably had this happen to you. It sends you to like an article that'll tell you how to do that. Or it might come back with some text on how to do that. That's human trained. The new deep learning models are trained on a whole bunch of data from all over the internet and books that are digital and all of these places. And from all of that data or words, it now can make its own prediction about the output. So if you say, I want a refund on my American Airlines ticket, it's now going, I know what the output needs to be. And it's now looking at all these things and giving an output. So no human has to stand, let's kind of just say metaphorically, behind it and putting in algorithms and code that tell it what to do next. Most of the stuff that we've dealt with have been algorithmic code that, like, if you go to Netflix and it says, you might like this based on your watching history, we think you're going to like these movies. That's an algorithm code, and it's different from what we're seeing right now with the AI. Now, you may not have heard of anyone say AGI, but it's really important to understand that people are like, what's going to happen with this AI? It's going to take over the world. And when they're talking about that, they're talking about AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. And artificial general intelligence is when the AI would have a conscious, would have empathy, would have all of those things that make us uniquely human. From other beings. So that is, if you hear the term AGI, that's what they're talking about. And when most people are freaking out about AI, they're thinking that it'll be this AGI that we saw in the Terminator, if you happen to have seen that movie, which it wasn't a great predictor of like this day, because now we're all like, is it going to be Terminator? So, and in case you haven't seen the Terminator, the AI comes back and takes over and starts killing people, and they have to defend themselves. That's not the scenario we're going to be having. So the other thing that you need to know as we move into how is this going to shift the writing place, is you need to understand about AIGC, which is AI generated content, which is basically someone telling AI to go, let's say, for example, go find a picture of Barack Obama and then make that picture talk with Barack Obama's voice in a way that you could never detect. You wouldn't know that is what's called a deep fake. And Barack Obama might be targeted, him talking to people who through data have recognized are sitting on the fence and could go either way in their votes in the United States in the next election. And Barack Obama might be programmed to say, hey, I know you voted for me, but this year I think you need to vote for Nikki Haley, who, by the way, if you're not an American, is the opposite party of Barack Obama. And I don't think he would ever do that. But what they would do is take the data for people who might be on the fence and use those deep fakes to target people. And that's why understanding what AI does in something called, and I'm writing about this in my book, AI literacies. And there's all these literacies that kids need to understand about AI in order to understand what it's producing. And so that's going to become one of the most important things. We should honestly step back for a minute from the fear of kids writing these essays that are like crazy good that you've never seen before, and really maybe focus some of, and I don't want to say fear, but some of our attention on the fact that we're going to have this ability for targeted information at people. And we saw that in the pandemic. We saw that in the 2016 election here in the US. We had people who were targeted with ads and information. And if you know anything about that, and same thing with Brexit, there's like a whole lot of research around that. But if you've done any searching about that or know anything about it, that will be sort of really baby time in terms of targeting people with information that looks and appears real. In our next election, at least here in the US, and I do not mean to be US centric, but we probably will have some real issues around AI generated content, because AI, the open AI that's created this Chat GPT, we'll talk about in 1 second. They also have something called DALL-E 2, which can, with a prompt, make an image of something. Then you can take it to another AI program and make that image talk. And so we're going to have to keep up with this and really, really teach kids these AI literacies that I haven't seen people talking about. And that's why I wasn't going to write a book. And then I saw where people weren't filling in holes. And I'm like, because if not, we're going to go down. I saw people talking about, oh, we can use the AI to write test questions. And I was like, no, please, let's use the AI to get rid of test questions, because kids are doing such thoughtful work in conjunction with the AI that we don't have to ask regurgitation questions. So I have to win. So now I'm writing a book because I've got to make sure that we approach this right.
Hey,
And
Holly, this might be a good chance
yeah,
good place to enter the question. So Anouk was asking, what tools do you use to see if kids have used AI? You may talk about this in later on, I'm not sure, but as we're talking about AI literacies and getting kids to understand it and teachers to understand it, I thought that might be a good place to kind of dump that question in there. So are there tools out there to help decide if something was written by
there
AI,
are
AI or
things.
not?
There are things out there that will decide, but as Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, says, anyone, even with a couple attempts, can find a way to get that not be viewed as written by AI. So you can get it written by AI, then you can take it through another AI to get different wording, then you can take it through another AI. So our job is not to detect AI. Our job is to learn to work in symbiosis with AI. And hopefully at the end of this, you'll hopefully, maybe if not, maybe my book or something, but rethinking whether or not we can detect that, because I think that's the wrong question. I think we have to ask, how can students work with this? And then how do we get them to be honest about their working with it? So like in my book, obviously I'm going to Chat GPT to do some stuff for me, like check some facts and rewrite a couple sentences. So something I'm trying to do in my book, and I got this idea from Matt Miller, who just had a book come out as well about AI, is he said, what percentage of this, or I don't know how he words it, but what percentage is done by Chat GPT? And I'm going to do the same thing and say, this is what I did with Chat GPT in this chapter, and here's what I didn't do. And I think we need to look at it in that way going forward. So Chat GPT is actually as a computer program that can understand and talk like a human. So you just ask it what are called prompts, and it gives you back answers. And before, we would have to go to Google and say, hey, what's the definition of cold fusion? And it would give us 10 sites that we would have to go through and see if they gave us the definition. Now we don't have to do that anymore. We just learn what cold fusion is. But there's some problems with this, because Chat GPT is something that is built on what's called a large language model. And understanding a large language model is going to be key going forward from this point on. You're going to be saying large language model to your friends. You're going to be having conversations with students about, was this a large language model? And what a large language model is it's an AI that's trained on a data set. So right now, ChatGPT 3.5, which everyone has access to, it was trained on 45 terabytes of information, which is, if you don't know what 45 terabytes of information is, it is about 500,000 lifetimes of information. But here's the catch. It's built on all the things that were on the internet. So back in the day, I was like a Google certified innovator teacher, they were called at the time. And I was really into Google Blogger, right? And my kids wrote Google blogs, and I wrote a Google blog about my dog and all kinds of stuff. And that is what the AI is trained on. It's trained on very good sites, but it's also trained on human opinion, human bias, and things that could be a problem in a writing class. And I like to say, that we have not done, and listen, I'm not blaming anybody. I'm part of this problem too, but we got computers and devices in our classes, and we never taught students how to validate that information in which they searched and found. And I tried to do it as best I could, because I got a one-to-one class very early on in 1999, but no other teachers were doing it. No one was doing it. And just now in 2023, the state of New Jersey actually is making it mandatory. But it's 2023. We just went through a pandemic where kids who were in our classes, who went through our school systems, validated that JFK Jr. is still alive and going to come back and be vice president. And they validated that information on the internet because no one ever taught them how to find out if that information was true or false. And that's going to become critically important now. And we've already seen what it can do to a nation. if you want to look at the United States, what it can do when people don't know how to validate information. And one of the things in the writing class that we do, I think, this is Holly Clark think, one of the things that we do incorrectly is we have works cited pages, but we never ask the kid. We say you cite that source, but did you validate that source? Did you check and make sure that source is true and valid information? And I know this because in 2003, when I was early on and no one else had a one-to-one, my kids all turned in a report about how Martin Luther King Jr. was a communist, a cheater, which we know he did cheat on his wife, but all of these bad things. And I was like, oh, what did I do? I've just ruined these kids' lives. They all think that he's a communist and all of these things. So I went and looked at their works cited, and they had this one page there that was this site that had rap lyrics to go with who Martin Luther King Jr. was. So they all chose that site. Like one kid had told another kid, and they were like, this is a great place to learn about him. But then when you go through the site, it was really, really racial, horrible stuff. So I started to make my kids go look at who wrote that site, who's the author, what bias is there in that site. And they had to do these 4 steps that I made, that I got from Alan November, as a matter of fact, before they could turn in a site as part of their work cited. They had to validate that information. When we went back and looked at that site, we found out it was written by white supremacists, and it was a problem, a huge problem. But I was out there swimming alone in the one-to-one device world at that point, and there wasn't very many people to talk to. There was no Twitter, there was no YouTube, there was no anything. So I was making these mistakes early on. And because of that, I can now see that AI is going to bring that same thing, but on steroids. And so as writing teachers, we're going to have to redefine what the works cited page looks like, and we're going to have to do it quick. And if people don't do it quick enough, do it in your own class by having kids validate that information in the works cited. I like to now use if they put the works cited, let's say in the paper that they wrote, that they did it in Book Creator, I make them have a Wakelet collection showing all the steps that they took to validate that information. They could also do it inside of the book and Book Creator, but that's going to become really important. So back at this large language model. Now, Google also has a large language model, but it's called something different. It's just a couple letters off. And for some reason, I say it every day of my life, but I think it's like an LDMA. But I could be wrong. If someone has it, they can put it in the chat. So you're going to not just hear LMA, you're going to hear these other Chat GPT-like systems where I have a prompt and I ask the AI to respond and it responds back. Microsoft is using Google Bing to do that, or sorry, Google Bing, Microsoft Bing to do that, which is a search engine, which will also look at ChatGPT 4 for its answers and the internet, because, and this is important, ChatGPT, this large language model that's running it, was only had information to 2021, and GPT-4, which is out now for the paid for version, until 2022. So if you have a question from 2022 till now, it needs to search the internet, right? And so that's what Bing does, and it's really nice. Bing also has what's called a temperature gauge that'll say, do you want really precise information that might not have bias? And you can click on that. Or you can click on, I'm more open, like, let's just see what you say, kind of temperature gauge. I don't know the exact wording because I don't go to Bing that much except to play with the ChatGPT-4 or the GPT-4. So that is these large language models, whether or not they're called LDMA or whatever they're called, that's something that students have to understand. What's the data set that it's being trained on? What are the possible biases it can have? Because if it's being trained on Google Blogger, there are a ton of biases that it could be trained on. So what makes this large language model work is something called natural language processing, which we've had for a while. It's just now being used on top of this large language model. We've had a natural language processing when we talk to Siri. It's a human language that it understands. So we've had it, but now in conjunction with an LLM, it's it's super powered. So GPT-3 or 3.5 was weak in casual reasoning, but not anymore. The fourth version of it is no longer weak in casual reasoning. And that's because it's learning from itself and the prompts people are doing. It's weak in abstract thinking, still is. It's weak in explanatory statements, not anymore. It's growing, and this is only the second iteration we've seen. Can you imagine our students who are kindergartners right now, when they graduate and they're even in high school, we're going to be on GPT 17, and it's just not a battle that we can fight whether or not they're going to use this to write papers. They are. You need to walk away from this understanding that students are going to use this. It cannot be stopped. Now now we have to talk about how do we do that correctly. It's weak in common sense. It's weak in intentional creativity. So let's go back to that Barack Obama instance when Barack Obama is talking about Nikki Haley. That is the AI performing a task, but somebody had to come up with that task, and that's called intentional. Thank you, Ben. I knew I was doing it wrong. That is intentional creativity, that someone came up with the idea that Barack Obama would do that. So that's what ChatGPT isn't good at, that and understanding its own bias. I almost put a red line through this because you can now ask ChatGPT if it gives you some information, is it possible that has bias, the information you gave me? And it will come back and tell you the places where there could be bias. So as it's generative, and I'm going to talk about this in a second, it is learning from itself, and it's beginning to learn where those biased parts might be. People are helping to train it to say, yeah, but that's a systematic racism that made that happen, or whatever. So along with ChatGPT is DALL-E 2, which is probably going to be DALL-E 3 soon enough, but is a thing where you put it in a prompt and you can get an image. So we were reading Anne Frank, so I put in the prompt of Anne Frank in the apartment. Let me put my microphone closer. I'm sorry, I didn't have that close the whole time. Reading, because Anne Frank did a lot of reading when she was in her apartment during the Holocaust. And you can see that the images look like Anne Frank at 50, and Anne Frank was actually 14. So the images right now, I'm not super impressed yet, but we're DALL-E 2, DALL-E 10. What does that mean? So I think though it's not impressive, it's nothing to shake our heads at, let's say. So I see a lot of stuff coming through, and I'm going to take a breath in a second and talk about some of the questions that I'm sure John is gathering, or comments. But one of the things that we have to really understand is that when we say we're going to shut this down, what if kids use it to write, then we are not getting kids ready for their future. And that creates a digital divide that is even worse than the digital divide of having a device and not having a device. And it becomes a really equity and access issue. And the new digital divide will be those kids who can critically evaluate AI responses and communicate and collaborate effectively with AI. Those are some skills that we're going to have to be able to help kids do. Now, I'm a writing teacher, so I want to, before I take a breath and let John ask me some questions or comments, tell me some comments, I want you to know that I think students need to learn to write 100%. That is my jam. That's what I did 25 years doing. I'm into it. I have enough of a futurist attitude that I could see that what that looks like is going to shift. Do I think that second graders should not learn how to write sentences? No way. But I was chatting on Twitter with a third grade teacher who had brought up some paragraphs, some written by AI, and had the students look for interesting words, look for grammar, look for things. And she said they were so into it that they were just like really doing it and getting into it. And I've got to tell you, there's not many third grade classrooms I walk by where kids are like all into the editing process. But now we have this incredible opportunity to shift what this means, this writing, and that's where we're going to go next. So I'm going to stop, make this a little more interactive. So John, do you have anything?
Yeah, we've got some questions coming in here, and let's see here. I guess this one's a pretty big one, and I think that you've answered this already, but I'm gonna say it again. How will students learn how to write and think critically if a prompt can do this for them, right? If a prompt can write their papers, how is it possible that they're going to be able to think critically? And I think you answered it, but
I'm going to answer it more. So we're going to hold off and say that is coming, I hope. And if it doesn't come and I don't make it clear, let me know, because I'm writing a whole book about it.
Yeah, so, I love it. We've got a comment about a validity page, not just works cited, yes, but a validity page. I mean, yes, I think that's a cool idea too. I worry about prompts that are entered into AI sites that will be used as authentic when it is influenced data, when the prompts that come back are influenced data. So I think, again, I'm not an expert on this, but I think that comes back to the validity, right? So if the results that come back appear influenced or not, I need to look into it and see how. But it is a fascinating, thing that we're going to be coming up on, right?
And I think what this person also is talking about is when ChatGPT 3.5 first came out and we all started to play with it at its beginning. I actually got to play with ChatGPT 3, but it was more, you had to have programming language to really get responses from it. But someone put in who won the 2016 election, and ChatGPT went based on the data set, looked at the popular vote, and said Hillary Clinton won the 2016 election. And then the person said, I think you are mistaken. We use an electoral college. You're going to need to look at the electoral college and come back with it. There's a different answer. And so that person helped train the AI. But what this person, I think, is saying, what if the person, instead of saying you're wrong, said, yep, Hillary Clinton won. And that's exactly, and then the AI starts thinking Hillary Clinton was president for a while. It actually is being trained right now. Most of the people are not nefarious who are part of on it. And so it's really tightening up its information and getting a lot better. And when people who are working, I'm sure at OpenAI, see something like that happen, I'm sure that they are looking at it and reprogramming it. And that's why they gave it to us, to see what it would do. And that's why you have 3.5 for free, because it wants to see what will happen. There was an instance where people started what's called to jailbreak Microsoft Bing. There's some really big terms around it's like called an hallucination. It means that the AI is thinking something, giving wrong information. We don't need to get into all those terms, though they will be part of AI literacy for sure. But there are ways to do it. It's just right now, it's not happening at the mass mode that most people worry about.
This one also just said that GPT is currently also kind of weak in cultural references and history outside of the Western European ideology. Definitely room for bias, it says. This one I love how it's going to push us as literacy experts and teachers to re-examine how we assess student learning. And I think you're right. I think that's the big takeaway, right? Like, it's how do we move things forward?
Let's talk about that. Yeah. So just a really quick thing for you guys to have is this quick start guide for teachers and students about prompts you can put in that can really give you some interesting information that will make you a better teacher and a better learner. For example, that table I showed you earlier on in the video, getting a table of responses and having kids like let's say, give me a paragraph of what The Outsiders is, but give it to me in persuasive, give it to me in summative, give it to me in humorous, give it to me in critical analysis, give it to me in high interest, and then breaking down the differences between the exact same paragraph written in different ways. I think that's a beautiful way in which to use it as a teacher. I also love the expand and step-by-step. So let's say learning about the fall of Rome, and you get a Chat GPT step-by-step of what happened. You take that, you pass it out on the LMS, the Google Classroom, maybe even put it in Book Creator. And then kids take that step-by-step and make a sketch note. And then as we go into the Roman Empire and the things that happened, We can add to that sketch note as we go along, but we've done something pedagogically that's super important. We've given kids background knowledge before we go into the unit. And that background knowledge is what kids need to really sink their teeth into information. So we're applying strong pedagogy to this new technology, and we're bringing forth better results because now kids have that background knowledge. Now we can look at different writing styles. I also like the one where you and I did this just recently. Kids were learning about the quadratic equation, which I have a love-hate relationship with, and we use Chat GPT in front of the class to say, when would you use the quadratic equation in real life? And it produced 5 amazing examples that I had no idea that that was the quadratic equation. So the shift in information is what we have to look at here. So that you'll have those for those things. And what jobs is this going to impact? This is going to impact front level, easy jobs, rote jobs, things like reading an X-ray. An AI can read an X-ray way better than a human. So like a radiologist, telemarketers, things like that. That's going to be a thing of the past. And we couldn't do that before because it had to be human trained. Now these AI are working off these neural networks and they can answer your questions probably better than humans, to be honest with you. I'm sorry to let you know. But the things that won't go away, your hairstylist. You don't want a robot cutting your hair, we love that interaction we have with the person who cuts our hair and we catch up with them for a month and whatever. But the people who will be required to work in symbiosis with AI are people like doctors who will use it to have more information than they had access to before, and teachers who will use it, in my opinion. I've always been like, we need to have deeper learning in our classrooms. We need to have kids sifting through information and looking at it and constructing knowledge and doing all of these great things. And at the end of a deep learning unit, you have to be able to transfer or apply that knowledge to something new and novel. Well, getting that new information or that information has been like, I've always talked about deep learning. Yay, let's do it. But I had to go find that information, put it into packets for kids, cut it up, find differentiating viewpoints. It was a task. It's not anymore. Now we have no excuse. I don't need kids regurgitating multiple choice test questions because I have to teach them while everyone else catches up and is still using them. But now my kids are going to be thinking so deeply and critically about information that it's going to stay with them. It's going to be that kind of information that sticks because I'm now going to be able to provide better units because I have access to this information. So it will never fix an HVAC.
Holly, real quick before you do this video here, which may end up answering some of this question. What are you seeing as the issues, I suppose, around use in terms of ages? Because if you're not supposed to be under 18 to be using Chat GPT, how are teachers going to use this with kids and still not violate privacy and stuff like that? So what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so you know what? It's early on, so I'm just saying early on information. This may all change, but when Chat GPT first came out, it was 18 and over only, though when you went to it, it didn't check your age. So it was kind of like, okay, 18 and over, but I'm not going to ID you, kind of thing. Now it's 13. And there are many school districts, many who have not shut it off for students. And for those places where it is, kids are under 13 and teachers are using it, I see most teachers using it like they're using it and showing it on the screen. But if you got a permission slip, and I have to tell you, as an early adopter, no, we didn't have Google at a school that I moved to. I was in Chicago where we had it, and I moved to San Diego, and they were like, "What's Google?" And so I was like, "I'm using Google with these kids because it's got collaborative features." So I had every parent sign a permission slip. I brought them in and talked to them about why I was going to be using these Google Docs and slides back in the day, and had parents sign permission slips. So it's just the same situation. What do I know about the data? The data is, something that your school district is going to have to work through. But if I were in a 5th grade classroom right now, I would either do it on the screen or do the research myself and pass it out through Google Classroom and say, compare and contrast these AI responses, or I would ask for parent permission. I think that the parent permission, that's funny, some have ChatGPT do the parent permission. Yes, I think the parent permission, however, is going, I just really check with your school administration before doing that, because I just think people are a little frightened right now. But I will tell you that I am like almost booked for the summer going to schools and talking about this, because people care and they want to do it right. So I think that we're going to go back into a school year where things will be more open, if my book upness has anything to do with it. So I just want to show you Johnny Piercy using this with 5th grade classroom really quickly. I know I'm at 40 and we only have, well, at least only 1 hour, but let me show you what Donnie Piercy in Kentucky is doing with 5th graders.
These 5th grade students might look like they're doing an average writing assignment.
Ooh, what do you think?
But their prompt wasn't created by their teacher. Instead, they chose from 10 different options generated in seconds by Chat GPT, an artificially intelligent chatbot.
Like every other educator, I had that concern. Is this something that students are only going to use to cheat? So I started to think about like, okay, what role is AI, artificial intelligence, going to play in the classroom?
Kentucky Teacher of the Year, Donnie Piercy, let us peek inside his Lexington 5th grade class, where they utilize ChatGPT in a number of ways, from grammar exercises like Find the Bot, where students have to guess which paragraph was written by ChatGPT versus their classmates.
And you jump out, it's like, ooh, I'm pretty sure it's not that.
For the second one, they put it's actually put Flora. They should have put an A.
Oh,
They made a
interesting. That's
The reading exercises through personalized plays generated in seconds by the program.
People in 5th grade class, the dual birth children, and I see where your names with their birth certificate.
So the big thing that I've looked for as a teacher over the last 17 years is what things can I bring into my lessons that inspires my students to be creative. With AI, with Chat GPT, I've always looked for a way that I can use this tool to inspire my students to become better students, to really master content.
So that video is inside of the book and you can watch it, the rest of it, because it's really quite good. But Donnie was telling me something really interesting. When he was doing Find the Bot in that Google form, so the kids all filled out the answer, and then he did one and it was the bot and they had to try and figure out. He said all the kids were spelling right. They were doing perfect grammar. They were capitalizing because they wanted the other kids to think that they were the bot. And he was like, that was something I didn't think would happen. And I was like, duh, of course, like it's DOL for those of us who are language arts teacher, daily oral language on steroids. So that was really neat. And then they didn't have this on film. He told me that the producers of Good Morning America went up to his kids and said, so are you going to use this to cheat? And his kids responded, why do you think we want to cheat? And I was like, mic drop. Like, that's like, we're all going at this other place, but the kids really aren't. And the kids who are going to cheat they've got Spark Notes and Cliff Notes anyway. Like it's happening. I did it non-technical style back in the day. So like that's why we have to be better and smarter and I don't want to say faster, but just more agile and flexible in the way that we think of this. So how do we do that? And this is where we're going to get to the writing part. When you start talking with kids about AI and the bias that could be there, I made this graphic super quick because I wanted to talk to them about it. This will evolve, and it's like Commodore 64, me introducing Pong or something, because this will change. But there's things that we can do for knowing about the bias, at least the best to our ability, is we can ask, number one, the 2 yellow boxes are actually asking the AI questions. Is this bias? Where did you get this information? Provide me with a link, which it will do. And then the bias part is really going over those things I did with my kids where, okay, now let's validate that information. How do you know where this is written? Like, or who wrote it? Have you looked for it for possible bias or links out to sites that are a little iffy, things like that. So that's in there. I'm just trying to talk really fast so that we can get at, let's see. Oh, I forgot one part, but that's okay. So now we have to ask ourselves, and I've gone through a really deep dive on this for the book and just for me personally. I've called teachers who are my gurus, one of them being Donnie, one of them being Lisa Highfill, who does HyperDocs. And I'm like, what is writing after all? Like, what is writing? Because in this world, when words are changing, what are the things that we have to evaluate and think of? And so what I've come to, and this is a Holly Clark think, I like to call it again, because this is not what you need to think about this, but this is what I'm starting to shift, is that writing in its purest form is communication. And communication is us being able to articulate our thoughts in a very logical, maybe persuasive manner. And as reading has evolved in our world, and when I say reading has evolved, it's more layered. I go to like maybe an Instagram reel first that'll take me to a blog post, and that blog post will have infographics and all kinds of other information and probably a video. And when I read, it's much more layered than just text. But our writing has not kept up with that layeredness. And so now we have kids write a paper like the one that you see in this book. And that is actually one of my students writing a persuasive paper. She calls it Dear Mom because she decided she was going to do it in this way, about texting while driving, because her mom texts all the time while driving. And she still needs to do the writing process, and she needs to still find the statistics. But what images would go with this? Is there an elevator pitch that she could do inside of Book Creator using the video record tool that would say, this is my, what I'm trying to say in this paper. So we need to add on those elements of the new layering that is part of reading in today's world. And I think the reason that we haven't added things like infographics and graphics is because the AP doesn't test them. The AP only tests the written word, and academic writing is important, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. And I hear all the time from people who own companies, kids who come in, the Gen Zers, they can't write. Of course they can't write, because all they've learned to do is 5-paragraph essays. You want them to write an email. They can't do that. You want them to write something concise and compelling to get you to whatever they're doing. They can't do that because all they've been doing is essays. So yes, it's true, they can't write, but they can write an essay. You're just not asking for it. So when I hear people say, oh, but kids can't write, we got to teach them how to write. We need to teach them how to do concise information as well. We need to rethink what that looks like. So we need to question that final product and what images would help that. But here's hot off the press, which it'll change before my book comes out. But here are some of the ways I'm thinking about the shifts in writing instruction. So your brainstorming sessions, that could be with Chat GPT. You could be sitting there and saying, I'm really interested in animal rights. What are some things I could talk about with animal rights? And Chat GPT will list 10 things. You can be like, oh, whew, that's a good one I can find. Like, I would have had to gone to the microfiche. Like, like I would have had to have gone to the card catalog and looked up, but kids don't have to do that now. This collaborative storytelling, have students work with the AI models to create stories. They write a couple sentences, then the AI model writes a couple sentences, like could be interesting. It's thinking outside those things, vocabulary expansion, research assistance, which I think is super important, but we have to teach that bias. AI assisted editing, which I think we should focus there first. And I've done this with fifth graders, and it's amazing to watch, taking a paper from last year and doing the same paper in AI, passing them both out through Google Classroom and saying, I want you to sit in a group and try and figure out which of these is the AI paper. They are into it. If you guys are language arts teachers, do that lesson tomorrow and watch kids be like, oh my God, I'm going to find it. I can't wait. And they're underlining words that are like suspect is what we were doing, and words that they liked, but probably were AI and not another fifth grader. And I mean, it was just the most amazing thing to watch. And any teacher who has done this reports back the same scenario. There's a teacher out of Illinois named Steve Dembo who reported that he broke kids into 4 groups and gave them different levels of AI assistance. And one group they could only use AI. They couldn't write anything on their own. And they were like, yes, we got the best group. And he says that by the end, they were like, the kids were like, oh, I want to write some of my own words. Like they didn't like it, and they're 8th graders. So, and when they looked at all of the responses later to try and pick the best ones, they were all human written. They had AI assistants, but they were human written. So I don't think we need to be as closed to this as we're starting to become. You could look for opposing viewpoints. Okay, so say you're writing a paper about the problems with texting while driving. You could ask ChatGPT, and I hope you don't do this. This is a really bad example, but what could be some of the benefits of texting while driving? Hopefully it says nothing, but creative inspiration and all these things, exploring different writing styles, having that mentor text that we've always wanted to provide for students, but we had to write it before. Now we can go to Chat GPT. Chat GPT or these large language models, whether they're Google, Microsoft, or OpenAI, are giving us this opportunity to have mentor text, to have all of this information that we can open up our classrooms to change the writing. Now, this is where, and we're at a book creator webinar, so we have to talk about this. This is where I think book creator is the savior of the day, because now we can put images and we can put our writing inside of a book, and book creator easily illustrate, easily make and bring in infographics and make that writing come to life. And then more importantly than anything else, I think, is that we can ask at the end of the book for the kids to go to the record feature and talk about the process they went through, or go to the record feature for one paragraph and have kids tell you about the process. Where did they do the research? How much did ChatGPT help them or not help them? And with each paragraph, we grab the process that they went through, and now we have real insight into who they are as writers and how much help they got from Chat GPT. Because I just don't, so I've been thinking about this and talking about it for a while, so I'm a little like deep down the hole, but I just don't know why we would want to take a writing assistant away from kids. I can't fathom it at this point. As a kid who has minor dyslexia, if I could have had a Chat GPT next to me to be like, oh, I need an idea, I can't come up with the wording. What's the wording there? I mean, I wouldn't be here with you today, everyone, because I would be a heart surgeon. No, I'm kidding. But I do. But I'm just saying, like, think of the kids with dyslexia. Think of the kids with English as a second language. Think about, I live in California, so, and San Diego at the border. Think of all the parents I can communicate with now. Like, it's beautiful. So, and like in Kenya, they have something like, oh, we have a lot too, but they have like homegrown languages. It's like 53 or something. I don't know the exact number, but like now you can communicate with everyone. And this should be the like most exciting time of being a teacher. And so instead of saying, oh, can we find people who can detect if they wrote ChatGPT, worked with, or ChatGPT wrote it, you should celebrate that they're working with ChatGPT to write this, because their writing is going to get better as the mentor text, as they add details and all of it. So anyway, we're at 153. Let me just make sure I didn't leave anything out. Oh, one last thing. So you need to get together with your school, your English language department, whatever, and you need to look at what these new definitions of plagiarism, or this new continuum of plagiarism, is. And it's, you know, at the top with AI did it all was what we don't want. And at the bottom where the kid didn't use the internet or any sources at all, like we don't want that either. So in this continuum, what makes you in your classroom feel okay? And then asking the questions, which of these would you consider cheating? And honestly, like going outside the typical definition, which of these is relevant to our students' future? And then which of these would you use in your work as an adult? I'm a person who jumps on technology right away. So I use ChatGPT. I pay the $20 a month, but I use it. That's probably it's my assistant. I'm going to be honest with you. It is my assistant. I don't send an email. I don't write anything without throwing it through ChatGPT first. Some people just haven't played with it enough and whatever, but once you do, It will be an integral part of the work. And kids today, people ask, will AI take my job? And the answer from this guy named Sidney Powell, I believe his name is, and he says, yes and no. AI won't take your job, but somebody who knows how to do it well will. And that's a guarantee. And that's our students. So we have to get them ready for ChatGPT 17 or 47 or 85. So anyway, okay. Do we have any questions? Any comments?
I think we've covered most of them, Holly.
Okay.
I just want to say thank you for doing this. Is very interesting stuff. For those of you that are asking me if the link for the live will be the same as it is on your YouTube channel tomorrow, I don't know. Honestly, I just push the live button, it lets it do its thing, and then I know it shows up tomorrow. So it's quite possible the link will be live tomorrow, and it's the same as the people who are watching it live right now. If not, I did put a link into our YouTube channel. It's just youtube.com/@bookcreatorapp. And you should be able to see that there. But like I said, that video should be processed and uploaded and official tomorrow sometime.
Is it over? Did you stop it?
No, it's still recording right now.
Okay.
So, yep. And then there was just some thank yous in the question box there. But yeah, no, I think everything was really good here, Holly. We really appreciate it. Lots of stuff to think about for sure. I know I'll be going back through this webinar many times to digest it. And when your book is out, I'll be getting that one too. Because I'm not there yet. So I love it. I just haven't had enough time to play with it yet. Oh, and Holly, the link to the book, do you want to share that link yet, or do you want to give it to us when you're ready with it?
So
send it out then?
in the second page of the book and maybe the last page, there's a sign up to find out more. So like when it comes out, if you just put your email in there or whatever, you'll just get a notification that it's out, and details as it comes out as I share some of the graphics. But I want to say one last thing. So Charity, who's in this chat, brought up something that ChatGPT gives really good feedback. And I've heard all these teachers go on and make YouTubes, but I can get feedback from my students. And I'm like, shouldn't the students be getting the feedback? Like, and I think Charity's saying that because she's a very good teacher who I know and worked with. But like, I don't want us to say, look at what I can do with this technology. I think this opens up the world of putting students back in the driving seat of being their own learners. So whenever you're using it, think to yourself, could students do this part though? You know, so anyway, just wanted to leave that one.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And yes, once this book is ready to be shared, Holly will give it a link to us, and then we can make sure we get it out to everybody that attended the webinar. And we'll probably put the link to it in our YouTube channel description and all that stuff anyway.
Oh, thanks. Okay. Thanks everyone for the whole hour.
Thanks everybody. Have a great day. And thanks for being here. Thanks, Holly.
Thanks.
All right. See everybody. Bye-bye.